Okay, we're live. So I'm here today with David, Matt, and Mikhail, and today's going to be a pretty easy day. David is one of the core developers of CanJS, and he's got a couple other projects too that he's going to talk about, like Feathers, that are pretty awesome projects. And he's got a great presentation lined up for everybody. So I'm actually going to let David take it from there. We have the Q&A app open, so any questions you have throughout the broadcast, go and post them in there, and we'll do our best to communicate those to David while he's doing his presentation. And any other questions you have just about CanJS in general, feel free to post, because we'll be doing a Q&A session at the very end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, David.
Hey guys, so I think I've done something similar, like a 5-minute demo already, but what I want to do this time, instead of just hooking up this service that was already running, I want to actually from scratch write the entire server application. And what I want to have in the end is a Node app that uses MongoDB as a backend and Feathers for the front end that's actually going to use to do MVC, the CanJS to do MVC on the client side, and have some real-time updates. Hopefully I'll get that. I haven't exactly timed how long this is going to take me, but everybody who's seen me work before probably know that I do a lot of coding, so I can never time it exactly. So yeah, let me share my desktop and let me know if you can see it. This is all there?
Yes.
Good.
You got the quick style terminal window too, right?
Yeah, I really like that one, and it's great for presentations too. First thing we gotta do is I'm gonna show you Feathers. Basically, what it is, it's a Node. It's a tiny little Node framework that just sits on top of Express, much like Express is built on top of Connect. So it's really tiny, really small, and you can actually use it instead of Express. So it just extends Express and adds some new functionality. The most important one is, because I'm going to need that, is you can register instead of just middleware functions, which you use in Express. You can also register services. And I'm going to talk a little more about that in a second. So to get started, I'm just going to install Feathers, and then we can actually kick off our project.
You should not depend on npm install working in a demo.
Oh yeah, well, dude, Facebook was even down today.
Yeah, see?
So if Facebook is down, right, then
yeah.
It's okay. No, I just tried it. I think we'll be good. I do have a backup too. So, and I'm going to start with a blank slate. So we create our app.js and say, okay, var feathers equals. And let's start with our first service. So I'm going to say my service equals. So this is what I copied from the website. What we can do is implement find, get, create, update, patch, and remove functionality. And all we do is, for some, you get the ID path, some additional parameters, like the logged in user or the query parameters and things like that. And then the callback that you call with your data, call back with your data. So for our example, I only want to implement the get functionality. So I'm going to remove all the rest. And my standard example that I always do first is this is a Node.js convention, and some data, and the ID is our ID that we passed, and then we say text, you have to do ID.
So is this like a route, my service? Is my service a route, or is my service get a route?
No, we're going to register it. This is just our object, right? This is just a dummy object. So now we have to register it, like you said. So all you do is, like in Express, you say use to-dos my service. Now we should probably call it to-do service. And to expose it through a REST API, we got to configure feathers.rest first manually. So we'll get our JSON object that we just returned. So this is always my basic example on how to get started. And I'm going to get into how to use Socket.io later. Basically, because our service just deals with data and doesn't handle any requests or anything like that. The good thing is we can expose those services through Socket.io as well. So you would do something like get. So you can do that on the client. Cool thing is you'll get and updated events and things. This is how we're going to be able to do our real-time website. But we're going to do that later. So now this is a basic example. You might have seen that a lot of the functionality is CRUD-like. And that usually means we can use some pre-done thing. Mihael asked before the Hangout started if there's a Postgres plugin. There isn't yet, but there's one for MongoDB, which is what I want to use. So Feathers that just adds CRUD functionality for MongoDB. And then we also need.
Hey, David, just quickly, what is this Feathers MongoDB? Like, is it a function, or is it just like kind of like a middleware kind of thing?
It's a separate module, right? Kind of like a plugin that basically implements that service functionality already based with MongoDB as the backend. Mm-hmm. So instead of having to type it all out here, right? If you say, okay, MongoDB.query, query, blah, 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 all this stuff, this can already be done, right? It's not that you have to write it yourself because, well, it's going to always be the same. So this is an implementation of a service for MongoDB. Just the basic functionality, nothing fancy. It's actually not very big, but why type it out yourself, right? Which a lot of the other examples for Express, you have to type all the queries out and all those things, but there's really no need to. I'm going to explain a little bit how you can still extend it, so you're not limited to what this thing offers. Now, another thing we got to do is body parser is an Express plugin. In Express 4, they started pulling out all the plugins from Express Core into separate modules. And what the body parser does is it basically parses post HTTP post and put and patch bodies, so you can use submit JSON or URL encoded HTTP bodies. So the whole Feathers and Express are pretty unassuming, which is why you sometimes have to configure a little bit of this stuff, but it's a little more explicit and you kind of actually know what's happening. So I want to actually use the body parser JSON. So we want to be able to parse JSON, and then I want to use body parser URL encoded. And then this option says extended. So now we can, our REST API can parse JSON and URL encoded forms. URL encoded forms is what CanJS sends by default. And then our service, we can actually drop and say, hey, create a MongoDB service on the to-do app database and the to-dos collection. So this is kind of cool because in 16 lines of code, we actually, if I restart this, yeah, obviously, I got to install the rest too because I started with an empty folder. So npm install fed and body. So now if you start this, we'll actually have our to-dos web service. There's already some stuff in there because I've been playing around with the database. So this is a MongoDB client, Mongo Hub. So here's our to-do app, and here's our to-dos database. And if I query it, there's already some things in there. But basically what I get is a full REST web service on this to-dos route that talks to MongoDB directly, just like this. This is cool because that's what I kind of wanted to do for our backend for the most part. And the good thing for to-dos is that there already is a framework, a front end for it. So if you haven't yet, check out todomvc.com. There is a, I'm going to close this, sorry, this is bouncing. So there's different versions in all those different MVC frameworks. And we're obviously going to use the CanJS version. So this is the to-do MVC implemented in CanJS. If you haven't looked at it yet, the architecture example, the source, this is the entire application. I kind of don't want to go over the implementation on the CanJS side, but I want to actually show how to just drop in our new backend into this front end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, close this, copy to-do MVC architecture examples CanJS into public. The public folder, and then we'll copy it. Yeah. I always made the mistake. We gotta actually
cursive.
Unix to R. Exactly. Thank you. Okay. So let's look. So here's our. No, it did. Sorry about that. See, I can code JavaScript when it comes to the console. It's not. So this is the CanJS application for to-do MVC. To-do MVC uses a local storage by default, but the cool thing is we can just replace our model with something that uses our MongoDB REST web service. Now, first thing we got to do though is actually host the public folder. So you do feathers.static dir name plus and now if you go to localhost, we'll see the to-dos app. Now, this is using local storage, so what we have to do is change our model, which is pretty easy because I just go into our to-do models, and you can see here it's extending can model local storage. All we got to do is extend from can.model. Now, let's quickly look back. If you look into our service, MongoDB uses _ID as the identifier, so we should change that first.
So why is it that...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Why is it that you're not adding like a find one or anything?
I will. That's what I'm doing. So in version 2.1, you would say resource is to-dos, and it does all of that stuff for you. This to-do MVC is using version 2.0.7, so we actually have to, like Matthew said, implement all the find all and stuff. So we have get to-dos, find one is get _ID, sorry. Create is post. And this is the cool part about it. This is mostly what we have to do for. And like you see, we're already seeing all our to-dos in here. And if I delete this, it'll disappear from our web service, obviously. Now, there's one problem that if I create a new one. Now, CanJS is sending an URL encoded form by default, so it sent complete false as the string false, which is why this is all kind of messed up. So if you would use JSON, it wouldn't be a problem, but we kind of want to have the option to massage our data on the server side. And this is the last thing I need to do on the server. Actually convert the to-do if I'm getting the string true or the string false. What we're doing for that is use another plugin. This is actually how you extend the functionality of like this default MongoDB service called hooks. And hooks allow you to do something before or after a service method call returns. I hope that makes sense. So what we can do is, like every plugin, we got to configure it. Actually, let's move this up here. Because it's a plugin, we got to configure it as well. And then we can actually say, before we create a new to-do or before we update a to-do, change the data so that they'll always be in the correct form. So we say app.lookup to-dos, which returns the service object with all the feathers magic behind it. And then you can say before create function. And like Express, so we have a hook object and a next function. So you can, before you create a to-do, you can do a lot of stuff before you pass it on, or you can pass an error, much like Express middleware. So what we want to do is get our old data. So this is the request data. And what we want to do is actually change the hook data to an object. So our text is old. Either old complete true or old complete the string true. Otherwise, it's just going to be false. And then to the next stage, which in our case is the MongoDB module. So far, so good?
Yeah, I think so. So what you're saying is before you can pass in an object, and for each of those different feathers, what do you call those? Like create all the different
methods, yeah, service methods.
Yes, all the different service methods. You can create a hook for each one of those. I got you.
Yeah, so you could do something like get. Oh, can you mute, Matthew? I'm sorry. So you can do something like this and say next. That's how you can do authentication, data massaging, and all this stuff. So what we want to do is convert our to-do to something that has the right format, especially converting.
Hey, David, is there a reason why you are not changing hook.data in place instead of assigning
yeah,
new
good call. Yeah. Oh, because what I want to do is not get if somebody submits a bunch of stuff, right? I don't want to put that into MongoDB.
Okay, makes sense.
So it's just a validation mechanism. So okay, let's restart this and look. Oh, I gotta install it. Yeah, always look. So if I refresh now, it actually looks the way it's supposed to. Let's look into here, complete false, which is great. And if I check it, it's true. The string true, actually we should probably make sure that this is not going to be the string true, but it's going to, sorry, apology, it's going to be truthy anyway, so we're going to be okay. We just want false to be false. All right. Next step. Oh, one thing I want to do is move this out of here. So we say convert to do for this function because we need to use it twice, because I want to convert to do on create and on update. That's why it didn't convert it. So this is our server, our to-do server service with everything that we want. Now, the cool thing that I want to show you, which is always super exciting, is we can just REST handler add our socket.io handler that I showed earlier, like this. And now our to-do service is available through REST and through a WebSocket. Now let's quickly restart this and try our, like this. So we can mark them checked. Now they're all done. We can uncheck them and delete them. So now they're all empty. So this is cool. The problem is, well, it's not really a problem, but this is a REST web service, right? If you want to know about updates from other people, well, we don't get push notifications. You have to poll or always look, refresh the page, and do those things. So ideally, we do the magical real-time thing, which is actually fairly easy for CanJS. Basically, what we get with socket.io is we can call, get, create, and find, and all those things through a WebSocket, but we also get created, updated, and deleted events when somebody updates, deletes, or creates a to-do. There is an implementation for CanJS models that actually, instead of the REST model, you can actually use the Feathers model. So what we do is we install CanJS Feathers. Sure. Oh. This was the wrong version. We need 0.1. And then we can exchange this model, which is our RESTful model, to this. What we say here is instead of having find all, find one, we just say, let's do it step by step. Sorry, that was. So we say can dot. And then we can remove all of this stuff and actually just tell it what. And at the beginning.
David, does can feather model, does that still extend can model?
Sorry? It extends can model, yeah. So it can do everything that a can model can do, but instead of using RESTful interactions, it's using WebSockets. And it's listening to updated events and those things. So,
well, I suppose like if you're using socket.io, that will work with REST as well, too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this basically is using socket.io out of the box, kind of, which is what we want, right? It's actually a lot less overhead and a lot faster than a REST API in some cases. So the only thing I got to do the local server.
This so they're typing, you're muted, so can you just repeat?
Sorry, can you say the question again?
So when you're typing, you're muted, and I didn't hear what you were saying about Can Feathers Connect.
We were hearing you, David, but sometimes when you type, it kind of goes out for a second. David.
Is he gone?
Oh no, you shouldn't have said anything.
Good job, Mikhail. Hey, David, we can't hear you.
This is the crucial part, too. Hey, I think you're back.
Mikhail, you take it from here, okay?
Yeah, sure. And then magically works.
You saved the day.
All right, yeah, you're good, David. We heard you. I thought. So while we're waiting, Mikhail, do you all use in GitHub? Do you use WebSockets for anything?
We have a service for that, but it's not really wired up at the moment. We are planning to wire it up though. So it's going to be probably something with Node.js that will talk to the Rails backend and proxy the data.
Oh, so you do have a Node? You have a Node front end?
We'll have to build it in Node basically because the Rails do not support.
That's
out of the box. So, hey, David.
It really was working. Mikhail said something.
Yeah. Is he coming back ever?
Yeah, it looks like he's
Hey, Mikhail, can you turn your volume down a little bit?
What?
Can you turn your volume down a little bit? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Wish I had more to say. I did use Feathers with David on a project, on a client project. Unfortunately, it was not the type of project that could really take advantage of this sort of thing. It was very much kind of a CRUD application, but there wasn't. It really helps when there's a lot of users using the application at the same time. We had like great ideas about kind of like notifications and things like that, or we were also thinking we kind of had this application where a user kind of changes some configuration. Oh,
I'm so
David?
sorry. Like, it's incredible. Basically what happens is when you change the Bluetooth settings, the browser like literally freezes and crashed. Like,
Okay.
so maybe you
of,
might hear cars driving by or something because this mic picks up a lot of noise. But
that's fine.
I was almost done anyway. What did I miss?
Feathers Connect is where you were.
Yeah.
If
So
about your microphone, just keep talking.
yeah. Keep typing.
Just repeat everything twice; it will be fine.
Yeah. So okay, let's connect connects to the local socket I/O. That's where we stopped. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to finish what I started because it's actually pretty simple. Now, can everybody see my screen again?
Yes.
Right. It might also mute me when I'm typing, so I'm trying not to. But basically what we did, we connected. There is a default setting that connects to a local socket I/O socket. So it's kind of cheating, but this is kind of what we need. And then we just extended the Feathers model, which is like Matthew asked, just extending CanJS model, but instead of using the a RESTful API connects to a WebSocket, to a Feathers WebSocket, and also listens to created, updated, and deleted events. So we can actually do we leave here. So our server, we set our socket I/O up here on the server, which means we should actually be able to use the sockets for our to-dos. Now this is not too exciting yet. The exciting part about this actually is that if I split this and open another one, it should have updated right away. Now let's quickly look why this isn't happening. Still making a JSON request. Did I save it? Oh no, everything is going wrong. No, but I kind of know what I forgot, right? This doesn't obviously work if you don't load it.
Yes. It's important.
All right, let's refresh. And Alexis saved the day too. This is actually called resource now.
So does that match what's in 2.2?
Yeah.
2.1?
So yeah, sorry about this hiccup. So this should be resource instead of service. But basically, resource for a CanJS model means the same as it would for a REST model. So you can just connect to the to-dos resource. Now we're connecting to our to-dos service. So now we got it up and running. And we got it up and running here, and now things actually update live. Obviously, this is, if you put it on Heroku, we're going to have a giant to-do party. But this is basically what I wanted to show, how easy it is to get a real-time application up and running just with the concepts that we have for creating a good REST web service and creating a WebSocket integration for it. That's not just tacked on, that's actually a core part of it. And with a framework that has a good model layer, you can just replace it and you'll get all those things for free. We didn't have to change anything but those 2 lines of code in our to-do application to get a real-time to-do app. And if you look at to-do MVC, the list of actual real-time implementations is a little short. There's 4 of them. So this is still pretty new, and I'm hoping that it's kind of a good way to actually work with this. Sorry about that little technical hiccup, but that's what I wanted to show. So questions?
David, I was thinking about the upcoming feature, probably be part of, well, I don't know what's going to come out, but Can Connect, that will make that a little bit easier as well, because you won't have to extend model anymore. You could just connect to some type of, Feathers service, and do it that way.
And you wouldn't have to load it. Like basically, if you only want the Socket.io or the Feathers models, you wouldn't have to load all the REST functionality. So it makes it smaller too. Yeah.
Is there anything else with like Can specifically that with your experience building this that you think would make it easier to build real-time applications?
Well, with the most important thing is that I would say every framework that supports live binding could do it, right? But because it's such an integral part of CanJS, you kind of get that functionality for free. So if you are using live binding and if you are using live binding, the only thing you got to do is replace your model layer, which is pretty cool. So it's pretty powerful.
David, Brett is asking, what do you think of Atom?
The editor?
No, our coworker, Adam.
Adam. Brett, I like it for presentations because it's nice and big, and I don't want to have, when I'm like live coding stuff, I don't want to have a lot of noise around it, like I do with my IDE. So it has. That's what I used to use Sublime for. So I never did anything fancy with it. I'm still using WebStorm for coding normally. So I like it. I use it instead of Sublime, but I was not very invested in my text editor of choice anyway. And for JavaScript, I'm still using WebStorm.
So, David, how you do some filtering of data in Feathers? What kind of support do you have?
Do you have an example? What you like?
So just getting just the completed to-dos or something like that. How would you do it through the service API Feathers provides?
So one thing I keep doing, it's not very opinionated. One thing I would do in my app is actually go in and say, here before find, I gotta look at the MongoDB adapter documentation. We can actually say.
So will you get the params will be like the find all params?
Yes, no, the query. So there's a couple of options. One would be the params could be params.user, could be the authenticated user. Params.query, so hook params. Actually, the query parameters. Okay. So what I want to do, I just gotta look. There was an example. I made an example here. So this is, for example, how you can get sorting in there. So we'll say find, and we want to sort it by. Let's look what we've got. We don't have that many. Oh, one thing I forgot to say, actually, now that you remind me. Now, it doesn't matter if you're using WebSockets. So that question comes up with Feathers a lot. If I'm using a REST client and I create a new to-do, I get it back. But the cool thing is, it actually you still get the real-time capabilities. So basically, if you have a web client and a mobile client, the mobile client is using the REST API and the web client is using WebSockets, you'd still get all the events for somebody doing something. The same as if you create a to-do on the server. So I think that's pretty important too. The only thing that does the same thing right now is Firebase, and Firebase is not open source. Just throwing it out there. So this is how you would add sorting. So I'm going to actually copy this. So we'll just say we just order it by text. And this is how I would do filtering too, right? I just don't know off the top of my head what the MongoDB query mechanism is. But basically, we'll just say, hey, just sort it by text, and let's restart it and see. Let's create a couple. So, are they sorted? No, they're not. 210. Yes, they are. Oh, wrong order. Wrong order.
Where's the reverse sort?
Hmm? Yeah.
He's sorting in reverse order, so.
Yes. So, okay, so let me change it. I'll just make one, restart it. But this is how you change the query and everything. So now it's in the right order. And if we refresh it here, we'll get the same order.
David, someone asked about how to integrate an authentication layer with Feathers.
Yes, so this is a big topic, but basically, you just use Passport with Express like you. So, where is it? So here you use just standard Passport authentication like you do with Express because it's all working with Express. And then you use Passport Socket.io. Then you use this to share the credentials between Socket.io and your HTTP API. So all those things exist for Express, and everything that exists for Express you can actually use with Feathers too. There's a little bit of Legoing, so I've actually been working on writing a wrapper that brings those two things together, but you can do it yourself already.
So basically, the answer is to the question, how do you do X with Feathers? The answer is usually do what you do if you were using Express.
Yes. However, one thing is first think about if you could do it at the service level, because basically on the service level you could you can probably do like 90% of the work on the service level without having to look at what's the request or things like that. So, for example, for setting the user, you can set the user through Socket.io and REST, but your service just checks if the user is there or not. So it doesn't matter where it came from or how it got authenticated, right? So always try looking at the service level first, and then look at the express or the express way of doing it. But many times, like, that's the thing, like, I've been wanting to write more about like best practices and things like that, but didn't have the time yet. But the services help a lot when it comes to abstracting all the request response, WebSocket, all this stuff. So if anybody has a question like that, just put it up as an issue, because I usually try and answer. So it's good to know what the problems are and what's the best way to solve them too.
Awesome. That's all the questions I see. Did Matt or Mikhail, you guys have any other questions?
Not really.
Okay, awesome. Huge thank you, David. This was a pretty awesome presentation. And
even though with me cutting out and swearing.
Don't worry, we blame that on Mikhail. So, no, I'm looking forward to using it. So, so thank you. And as always, we do these presentations every Friday. So hope to see you guys. Tell your friends, and we got a lot of cool ways to find out about it. If you go to CanJS.com and go to our blog, we have a post all about the community hangouts. It'll let you know, like a calendar you can follow to stay up to date with the hangouts, and we have a mailing list now you can join that'll give you updates on the hangouts and anything else we're doing with CanJS. So I definitely say check out that blog post, and we'll see you next week.
Oh, yeah, I did start writing a blog post about this, so hopefully I can put that up.
Okay. Have a good one. Bye. Bye.